Well, I mean, I was 11 in New York, and it was a beautiful, magical place. And now it's like a zombie, like like the premise of a zombie is it's this animated corpse of something that once was a living thing, and that is what New York has become. It's just very hard. It was very hard as a lifelong New Yorker to watch that happen.
Do you think it will come back?
Not for at least 15 years. Because none of the mechanisms are in place to reverse the ship.
Yeah, there was some hope.
And also, lots of people who would have been there to have righted the ship have left, including myself and my whole crew.
Yeah, a lot of people of my friends moved to Miami.
Yeah, it's Miami and Austin.
Yeah, there was hope with Eric Adams, right?
No, I mean for 5 minutes there was hope he wasn't going to be as bad as De Blasio, but that I think lasted like literally 5 minutes.
So we were there, I think it was a trip after the one where I saw you last. And the thing that blew my mind is I have no issue with drugs, but the open drug selling in Times Square. I was just like, how is this happening?
That's not as bad as the open crime in Times Square. Like there were people getting killed, daylight, robbed. That takes me back to the 90s and not in it's the worst aspect of the 90s.
Yeah, what was it like in the 90s? Because the first time I went to New York was 2002. I went after 9/11. That's correct? 2000? Was it 2001, 9/11?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so I went in 2002.
You don't remember what year 9/11 was?
Well, I was trying to remember. What's 2000?
How old are we?
I got it.
Are we both the president?
I got it right.
I just shot my pants.
I got it right.
You did get it right.
I got it right.
But you were unsure.
Well, I just had to double check. But when I was there, I was told.
And it was September 11th, not August, not October. You got the month right and the date.
9/11, I remember,
yes,
man.
Yes. Very tragic day. A lot of Muslims died that day.
They did. A lot of Americans died that day. I was told it was really bad in the 90s, but I've got like no perception of what it was like.
I'll tell you what it was like. I remember it very vividly. You couldn't have, this is before MP3s, you couldn't have your Walkman on the subway with the headphones or your wallet because there'd be groups of teenagers who would go from the train car to car, and if they saw your wallet bulging or your Walkman, they'd rob you. And it was like on the street, like people, this happened to me, let's suppose 3 years ago, and I'm like, oh, I haven't experienced this since the 90s. You'd be walking, someone will sidle up to you, and they'll start telling you a story with their hand in their pocket, and it'll be a story about how they're broke and how, they just need $20, but it's not really a story, it's a threat. You know what I mean? So it's like, you're giving me this money, but then they have the plausible deniability that it's, a charitable thing you're doing voluntarily. So that was something that they did. Also, just this kind of vibe about when people are acting in ways completely beyond the pale that no one seems to care. I was laughed at on Twitter a bit because last summer I moved to Austin in August of 2021. Before that, I was on the subway, and twice within 1 week, I saw people smoking on the subway, which I hadn't seen in decades. And people are like, oh, just deal with it. You're such a crybaby. And I go, well, first of all, why am I dealing with anything? Number one, like, why do I have to deal with the slightest little thing? Two is, I remember because one day it's smoking cigarettes, the next day it's people getting the crap kicked out of it. I mean, the way that slope is slippery, it's just overnight. And that's happened since you have shelves are bare, people shoving people into the tracks at higher rates, just
pissing on the train.
Even that I could wrap my head around in terms of, okay, that's gross, but it's not scary, right?
Right, okay.
But, what started happening was people would just start blasting their music on the subway, and no one seemed to mind. And what that tells you is, if they're not going to enforce this very basic type of behavior, at what point do people step in? Another thing, like, you'll have these busy subway stations like Union Square or Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, and you'll have one staircase for everyone to get onto the train into the station. So it's over. And people just sit on the staircase, which is like 2 people wide, and just sit there. What I used to do is I'd have a shopping bag. I'd walk by them, I'd accidentally hit them in the head. But the point is, when you have rush hour and people just sit there blocking, and nothing would be done about this. And all these little cues in of themselves are not a big deal, but they're all indicative of, all right, like, no one is interested in managing this. And I say this, of course, as an anarchist.
Yeah. So how have you taken to Texas? Because even even in New York's prime, it's still a very different place from Texas.
Yeah. So I am, people laugh and they say, oh, you moved to the San Francisco of Texas, which might be true. Austin might be San Francisco by Texas standards, but it's not San Francisco by San Francisco standards by any means. I am here because, again, all my friends moved here. I absolutely love it. There are certain things that I'm missing about not living in a big city, but there's certain, the thing that's the most important, in my opinion, about Austin as opposed to New York is the trajectory. So all of us, I think many of us can remember when you're young and you're starting to make it, even though you may have $500 in your bank account, it's still going in the right direction and it's exciting, as opposed to, let's say, if someone had been making it and now they're going down and now they only have 500 in their bank account. Those are very different phenomena, right? So Austin is very much a place where things are happening. There's an excitement in the air. There's a camaraderie with people that you meet. Whereas with New York, there was this pervasive sense of anxiety and tension, which I don't miss for a second, which I didn't realize to what extent had been there.
Yeah, so we travel a lot with this. We've obviously done New York, a place I used to love. We did LA. LA has its issues, but it's kind of fine because it's quite spread out, so you can just go and be on your own. We went to San Francisco after that. Our rental had its window smashed right outside a restaurant. We actually do you remember we made a joke of it?
What was the joke?
So, well, no, before we went to the restaurant, I said we'll probably come out. The window we smashed came out, was smashed. I mean, San Francisco is unfucking believable. We've been here for a month, and it's definitely my favorite.
Yeah,
it's a great place. What do you miss though about New York?
I miss all the little establishments that gave New York its character were destroyed by the COVID lockdowns.
Yep.
So that little boutique, that little restaurant, that little ice cream shop, that little music store, they're all gone. If you'd walk in like Park Slope, which was like a very kind of fancy neighborhood in Brooklyn, you'd see stores that have been there since the 70s, family owned, they're all gone. So there are some people who might tell you that New York would be better with more Targets. I'm not one of them.
My daughter would agree.
She would want more Target?
She likes Target.
There's enough of them. And the thing is, she wouldn't know what to like because she didn't know those places were there until she went to New York, right? That's what made it kind of special. So that is something that I miss, but I missed it while I was there. I missed the fact that there were scenes of people doing exciting things and you would meet cool people you were not meeting anyone over the last couple of years. And now if I'm a young person who's an innovator in any capacity, why on earth would I move to New York? Like all the decks would be stacked against me and there'd be very little upside.